Hey,
As you
Charlie.
know, we're starting this mastermind group for business people who are interested in mindfulness, and we're very excited to have you as one of our speakers. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do today in your day-to-day life that has to do with mindfulness, including your professional career?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, Charlie. It's good to see you again. And so happy to be here and have this conversation. And hopefully, there'll be some nuggets in here that will benefit some folks. So, what I do now professionally is I help leaders live and lead from their highest frequency. And mindfulness is really a key part of that. Um, and I think you asked, how do I work with mindfulness kind of throughout my day? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess a good place to start with is, everyone kind of has an idea of what mindfulness is. So I'll just share my definition of it. And it's basically being aware in the present moment of my internal state of being, how my body feels, the emotions I'm experiencing, the thoughts that might be going through my head. So it's just paying very close attention to that internal state of being. And this is what I call our frequency, our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs. And the key part of this is doing that non-judgmentally. And that's probably the hardest part. So it's really a self-awareness. And when we have that self-awareness, we then can be empowered to make certain changes in our lives, to let go of things that aren't serving us, that are causing pain, or to deliberately start incorporating and creating things in our lives, within ourselves, that bring us joy. So mindfulness and that self-awareness that comes from it is really foundational to it all.
Well, that's nice. I like how joy comes into that. I think that's one thing that some of our other speakers have talked about is how mindfulness actually creates an environment of joy, and that includes a work environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said that too, because when I came into the corporate world, the work world, my first big job was working at Microsoft. I was 23 years old, just barely out of college, and so happy to be there. But it was a very different time. It was like your work self comes to the workplace, and the other parts of Tyler are kind of reserved for, before 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. and on the weekends, right? There was this real kind of delineation or separation. At least that was my experience. And, we live in a different time now where I think it's become much more acceptable that who we are as a whole person, and no matter what context we're in, whether it's work or with friends or family or doing a hobby, wherever you go, there you are. So there's really no point in separating ourselves out in different ways any longer. And really, that's what makes life more enjoyable, is when we're in touch with that complete part of ourselves, independent of the context. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And if I had to sum up why I'm doing this project, it's exactly that. Like, that is the pain point. The pain point is that I felt that I was separating my life. There was Charlie who, like you say, went to work, and then there was Charlie who needed a break from work and would go on a retreat or do meditation or whatever, go bike riding, go for a hike. And kind of never the twain shall meet. But then as I found a way to incorporate mindfulness into what I was doing, and actually it's much more how I was doing it than what I was doing. I think it has much more to do with a mindset.
Yeah.
Um, how we approach everything. You talked about just that being present, right? And whether it's how we're having a discussion right now, like, I'm with you, right?
Yeah.
We're talking with each other,
Yeah.
not to each other, not at each other, not being defensive. Oh, is he going to steal my idea and take it to the boss or whatever? Um, and even even in the very small business world where most of us watching this are coming from, we still have a lot of insecurities. And I think to really be present and, like you're saying, be our best self. I mean, I love that. that's what it's about.
Yeah. And I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you around this idea of the old way was sort of compartmentalizing ourselves, like I was talking about, and as you described also. And that just doesn't serve us. You know, we are these amazing beings. And the more the totality of who and what we are can be present all the time, no matter what context we're in, then the more we're empowered to create the experiences we want for ourselves, to create the lasting impact and change we desire, whether that's through this vehicle we call a business and work and earning an income and creating value for our clients and customers and partners in the ecosystem and creating some impact for them in that world. That's amazing. All those things are so important and can bring so much joy. And the more that all of us, the totality of our being can show up, then the more we're empowered to do that really, really well. And, you know, what I think you feel this way too. I read this in your ebook, which, just a plug to check out Charlie's ebook if you haven't. It's actually really good. And it's very digestible, like 20 pages or so. You'll move through it very quickly. And that's that when we take this approach of the way you and I are talking about it right now, you said this in your ebook, and I agree wholeheartedly. Our life becomes our practice. You know, our moment to moment experience of ourselves, like I described internally, our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, that becomes our practice no matter where we are or what we're doing. And that level of awareness helps us not only understand what's happening inside, but then to take action to create what we want to create for ourselves, for that internal experience. And here's the beauty, like the more we do that, most humans, the vast majority, the thing that you want, Charlie, the thing that I want, all of us want. Like when I'm feeling down, I want to feel more joy. I want to feel more connection. I want to feel loved. I want to be loving towards myself, and I want to receive it from other people. And so it starts with me. And to the extent that I can cultivate that experience within myself, then I'm making that more available for everyone around me to also begin cultivating that for themselves. And the way I show up impacts the way they show up. We give each other this implicit permission to prioritize self-love, joy, connection. And all of that can happen at work. All of that can happen at the grocery store checkout line with our friends, our family, wherever we happen to be.
Absolutely. So tell me, what are some of your practices? What are some of the real concrete things that you do to cultivate that love, that connection, that presence? You know, what works for you?
Yeah. Well, there's a variety of practices, and depending on the day or the situation, I might go to a different one. And I just want to caveat by saying that this is an art as much as science. So this is what works for me. For anyone listening to this, play with these, but also like go check out other people and other ideas and find what works for you. That's all that matters, really what works for you. So I think at the foundation of all of it is silence. And it's so easy to, discount that, like, oh, it's been talked about so many times. It's been around for millennia. All the sages and gurus and saints talk about this. And the thing is, it's because it's so powerful, and because at the heart of it all, it really is the thing that leads to our transformation. So what do I mean by silence? I just simply mean sitting quietly, closing your eyes, because that just helps us come more to the present moment, and realizing that you are much more than a human. You are a divine being, however you want to describe that to yourself, a soul, a spirit, a higher self. This is what we are most fundamentally. And as that, we're having this human experience. So I just remind myself of that. And as thoughts and emotions, those human thoughts, those human emotions, those remembrances of the past, or those worries and anxieties about the future, as they arise, I do my best to remember I'm a divine being experiencing those things. I can just witness them arise and then settle back down, and just kind of move and float by across my screen of awareness as a divine being. It's like me watching myself as a divine being, watching my human self. There's a little distance almost. Mm-hmm. And what will happen with enough practice, because it is a practice, is that the human mind will quiet down a little bit, and the thoughts, the emotions, they start to recede into the background. And from this practice comes a lot of benefits. One is self-awareness. It's that mindfulness practice again. You see all of those things happening inside of us. Wow, look at that. I'm feeling this anxiety. Or wow, look at that. I'm getting really excited about this potential new sale or contract I'm going to get. Wow, look at this. I'm really anchored in the past and feeling some frustration about this, or it goes on and on. You begin to realize you aren't those things. They're just experiences that you're having. And that little bit of separation, that observation, that neutrally witnessing it really helps develop that skill of self-awareness. The other thing it does is it helps cultivate this inner peace and tranquility and calm. And these are qualities that I associate with that bigger part of who and what we are, whatever word you use to describe that. That's really a powerful experience to have. And over time, that can become more of our baseline experience. As we move through the world with our eyes wide open, we have access to that calm and that peace, that tranquility, that centeredness, that groundedness, that balance. These are more modern words we might use for it. And that really transforms your experience no matter where you are or what you're doing. And I just want to share one last thing on that. This is the main practice I'll highlight. But a friend of mine told me a story recently. His brother had the opportunity to meet with Thich Nhat Hanh, a very famous meditation teacher and practitioner from Vietnam, living most of his life in France. And he met with him in the early 80s and just was blown away by him as a being and what he was teaching. And this was his first real exposure to this kind of world. And he just wanted to know, like, what's the secret? Tell me what the secret is. How do I do this? And Thich Nhat Hanh simply said to him, no secret, just practice.
Yeah, and so Nhat Hanh has a way of saying things in very few words. He makes it seem so simple, but the implementation of what he says is not simple at all.
Yeah, that's the kicker. You and I know this. Like anyone who's had any experience in this quick realizes these concepts and ideas and practices are actually very, very simple. Thank goodness. I mean, we don't need more complication in our life, but that doesn't mean they're easy. There's a difference.
Right. Thich Nhat Hanh liked doing calligraphy, and he wrote a lot of these sayings in calligraphy. And the monks at Plum Village at his monastery gave me a present because I did some work with them of one of these calligraphies that I have right over here. And it's the way out is in.
Yeah.
Very simple, right? But, you know, it's a lifetime of work. It's that simple, right?
It is that simple. I love that. He's talented. That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. It's from a Robert Frost poem. And it's that the best way out is always through. And just that idea of we have to turn towards the thing we're avoiding, and always that means going within and moving through it.
Right. So let's shift gears a little bit from business and ourselves to other people and relationships. Can you talk a little bit about how mindfulness serves you there and how?
Yeah, beautiful. I think relationships of any nature, friends, coworker, intimate relationships are really the master class of what it means to be human, and also the master class of applying these practices and skills of mindfulness and crafting our lives, really. And so what do I mean by that? The way I've come to understand how we work, our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, is that whatever the quality of those are constitutes our frequency. This is the word I use. And we're constantly and always radiating that out into the world around us. And that our frequency draws back to us people, experiences, circumstances that are in resonance with our frequency. So you can think of the world as a mirror to us. So if I'm out and about in the world and I have an experience, and it kind of feels a little funny, like something inside of me is kind of like, oh, that didn't feel so good. I've learned, and this is a practice, it takes time, normally we think, oh, it's just that person. They're having a bad day, or it's not me, I'm fine, it's their problem, whatever it might be, right? But I've learned that actually, because of frequency and because of the world being a mirror to us, the first thing I should do is to look within myself and ask, okay, well, what thought, what belief, usually it's a belief about me, what emotions am I holding that would have drawn this experience, this interaction into my life? And that's the first step in me taking responsibility for what I've created. And it can be hard to witness sometimes. I mean, I'm the master at not taking responsibility for things like this. I can tell you a lot of stories of living my life where I finally woke up and realized, oh, it's been me all along. Like the Thich Nhat Hanh quote, the way out is in. It always is in. But when you start to look closer inside, you realize, gosh, always there's some sort of belief that we're holding that is creating this external experience. So our relationships in the world outside of us are our ultimate teacher, our ultimate guide, no matter who it is or where you are. And if it's a fleeting experience or if it's a relationship you've had your whole life, it's always reflecting back to us something about ourselves. And so that's the power of relationships, in my view, is it really helps us to understand ourselves better. And in that understanding, here's the part that's empowering. We can decide, wow, this belief I have about myself that's drawn this experience into my life that doesn't feel so good. Well, if I believed A and it created this uncomfortable experience, then what would happen if I believed B about myself? What would that draw into my life? And this other belief is actually a lot more enjoyable. It's a lot more self-loving. I feel more safe. I feel more joy when I believe this about myself. Like, I am worthy. Wow, okay, what could that draw into my experience? It changes your life. So yeah, relationships are super critical to the way I think about all of this.
So it's interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking about it, and my mind is going back and forth between relationships with people and relationships with my business. Mm-hmm. Because business is also, it's an extension of myself, right? The founder or the CEO, or even anyone going to work, how you interact at work, it's part of who you are, right? Like we said before, it's not compartmentalized and a different version of yourself. It's part of you. And but especially if you're a founder or a C-level executive, or a sole entrepreneur, then what I found is the issues that I'm having personally are also the issues I'm having with business, Yeah. And how have you found mindfulness to help in your business? Not just working with other people, but for you, for Tyler.
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Charlie. I agree completely with you. Whatever we create in the world, whether that's a business or what we're creating as an employee for somebody else, but let's just stick to your example, what we're creating with our business, it's always a reflection of us and our frequency, our internal state of being. What we bring to any endeavor in life is always a reflection of our beliefs about ourselves. So, I'm a business owner also, and I've certainly had my struggles of good days and bad days, and businesses that worked, that were great, and businesses that didn't work, that failed, that never really got off the ground. And when I look back on them, I realized that the beliefs I was holding about myself were always central to how the business did and how it was perceived. And not just by myself, but by my employees, my partners, my clients, my customers. So they're inseparable in my mind. And here's the beauty, if it all really starts with us and inside of us, then you're in the driver's seat. You have the power. If things aren't going well, that means you have the power to change something within yourself to start getting the results you do want. It's I find it really empowering. And I just want to add real quick here that
Yeah.
all the struggle, if I did a comprehensive review of all the struggle I've experienced with my businesses, I feel very confident that it would all come back to something that I was struggling about within myself. And that when I changed that, things changed within the business.
I agree wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we dropped a couple of names, and I was wondering if you dropped some more. Are there certain books that have inspired you, or people, or are there, I don't know, podcasts you watch or anything like that? What can you suggest to people who want to go deeper for more information? Are there
Yeah.
resources you can suggest?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many. These are a couple that are just top of mind in my life right now. There's a woman who I recently discovered. Her name is Jamie Kern Lima, and she wrote a book called Worthy. And the thing I like about this book and what this woman is doing, she's an entrepreneur. She's a very successful businesswoman, started a line of cosmetics and sold it for $1 billion. But her journey, it took 8 years for her to get the business going, to like make a profit. 8 years of her life.
Wow.
And for her, she realized, just like we're talking about here, that her business was a reflection of what was happening inside of her. And the primary challenge she was working through was one of self-worth. Am I worthy of having a successful business? Am I worthy of the dreams I have for myself? And, I think this is true in one form or another for just about everyone on earth. This question of, am I enough? This question of worthiness. And maybe it doesn't show up in the business context for somebody. Maybe it shows up in the context of relationships, of friendships, of an intimate relationship. It can show up in so many ways. So that's one that's really powerful and been kind of helpful for me in my life right now.
I'm definitely going to look that up because I can relate to that.
Yeah, check it out. She has a podcast also. She's interviewing amazing guests, and she's not afraid to kind of go there and get to the heart of things. The other book that comes to mind, and I have to confess, I haven't read this book, so kind of a funny recommendation, but my wife has read it, and what she's relayed to me and the impact I've seen that it had in her life has been very powerful. And it's called Radical Acceptance.
Uh-huh.
And the author's name will come to me in a second as we're talking. It's a woman, and I can't think of her name right now. But her background is mindfulness, also the Buddhist tradition. And she's talking a lot about judgment of yourself and judgment of others, and how that really not only is disruptive, but robs each of us individually of our own power. Even if we're judging somebody else, it's actually taking us out of our own power and standing in our power. But the most pernicious form of judgment always is the judgments we hold towards ourselves. And the reason this is really alive for me is because recently I've discovered that there have been some things I've been judging myself about all my life. And I mean, it was so painful to finally realize that, but also incredibly liberating and freeing.
Right. And like you said, you go through it, right?
Yeah, you have to. If you want to get to the other side, which is so worth it, the only way is to go within and to go through it. And on the other side of all that is literally more freedom, more internal freedom. All of these resources that we have within ourselves, our energy, our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, were occupied around judging myself and suppressing my natural state of being, my natural flow. But as soon as I stopped judging myself, or radically reduced how I was judging myself, I reclaim access to all of those internal resources. So you literally feel so much more free. And in a lot of traditions, they talk about the word liberation. You feel liberated. That really is what you experience. So I would recommend this book, Radical Acceptance.
Wow, those are two great, Worthy and Radical Acceptance. Those are two Both of them I'm interested in.
Check them out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, the journey of a seeker and of a business person can be very lonely. At least I found it to be, and I think a lot of people do. So, what do you see as one of the benefits of a group like the Mastermind group that we're putting together for small business people who are looking to integrate mindfulness into their work life, not just like we were speaking before about the individual integration, but to do it as part of a group?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my wife and I have co-founded our business together. And even though we're together doing it as business owners, there are those moments and those periods where you feel alone. It feels challenging. And I think there's real value in just being able to share your experience with other people who get you. They just understand because they've lived it also. And because of that, there's a natural level of compassion. To me, that's what compassion is. Having lived through a difficult time and worked your way through it, or maybe you're in it presently. And when you come across somebody else who's in a similar situation, your heart goes out to them. This is the very definition of compassion. You understand what they're going through, and you express love to them because you've been through the same thing yourself. And to me, that's the real power of a mastermind group. And, compassion is a beautiful and powerful emotion. It's a high frequency emotion that we can tap into to really help accelerate our personal development, our personal growth. So when we experience it individually, it's powerful. But when we come together as a group, we amplify that frequency. We amplify those things. And in that, there's even more power. So there's the camaraderie also. Like sharing those struggles and those difficulties. There's the understanding and the love, the compassion that comes from that. And then there's also the very practical, like, well, what did you do when you were in this situation? How did you work through this? Like, we all have our own inner wisdom that guides us. And if we just listen to it, really helps us to know what to do. And it can be really helpful to understand how other people have tapped into that or what they've done outward in the world and the action they've taken to move through things. It's really powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Power in numbers.
Yeah.
No, but also on one hand, we all have to be individuals, but in the end, we're communal beings, even the people who are introverts, they still have a need for human touch,
Yeah, we're social beings. Yeah, that's true. That's been true in my experience. I tend to have energy and engage externally with people, but then I also need periods of going within and rejuvenating and finding sanctuary. So I think it's okay to have that ebb and flow. Some people just are more extrovert most of the time. That's fine. Some other people are more introverted all the time, but it's part of our human nature. It's always there. I agree.
So my last question for you is, what's the sneak preview? What can we look forward to hearing from you, learning from you when you speak to us? What kinds of things are you thinking of covering?
Yeah, well, I would love to share more about frequency and how it works, the physics. There's a physics behind this that once we understand this, we can begin using these principles to help ourselves to release those limiting beliefs that we carry around, or conditioning. The unworthiness was one example that we talked about, or the self-judgment being another example. Once we become aware of those, we can release them. And then how we can use frequency to deliberately create the things we want. So as a business owner, you want obviously financial success. You want your business to do well and not just kind of get by, but thrive, right? Mm-hmm. So how can we use frequency? How can you use your frequency to create that reality for yourself and for your business? And I just want to get more into the nitty-gritty of all of that and teach a practice that people can begin using to apply this for themselves and for their business.
That sounds amazing. I'm definitely looking forward. It sounds both interesting and practical.
Yeah, that's the sweet spot.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Charlie, for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and
Me
I'm
too.
really looking forward to meeting with your group.
Great.